Okay, so we are going to be dealing with slope. And we're going to look at 3 different ways that you can find slope. First way we're going to start off with is finding slope from an equation. Now, most equations, linear equations, are written as y equals mx plus b, where m is going to be your slope. And don't ask me why they decided to use m. I really have no idea. And b is going to be your y-intercept. This x here and this y here are going to be your independent and dependent values, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're going to stick specifically on being able to find the slope when you're given an equation. So in other words, we're going to look at equations that are written basically in this format, and you guys be able to tell me what is the slope of the line. So let's look at the first one. We have y equals 3x minus 7. That's our equation. Again, slope is the number that is in front of x. That's how we know where it is in an equation. So if I look at y equals 3x minus 7, well, here's my x, and the number in front of my x is a 3. So guess what? My slope, which is denoted by m, is going to be 3. If I took another equation, y equals negative 3x plus 1. And again, I said, what's my slope? Again, slope is the number that is in front of x. So if this is my x, the number in front of my x is negative 3. So m would have to equal negative 3. If I did one more, y equals negative 2 minus 1/3 x. Well, this isn't written exactly like what we said our equation looks like, but it does have all of the parts that a linear equation has. And regardless of how it's written, I still should be able to identify slope, because once I find x, slope is going to be the number in front of x. Now, for all of you that were going to say m is 1/3, I'm going to say, no, you're wrong. Why am I going to say that? Because we always look at the sign along with the number. So for this, m is actually going to be negative 1/3. Okay, so that's if I wanted to find the slope from an equation. Again, this is our equation, and slope is going to be the number in front of the x. Well, that's one way to do slope. Let's look at another way. Another way that we can do slope is to find the slope using what's known as the formula or the slope formula. The formula says m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to use that to help us find the slope. Well, in order to use that formula, you have to first be given 2 points. So let's say we are given the points 2, 5, and 3, negative 1. Those are our points that we are given. Well, again, I'm assuming some things, and I'm assuming that you know all points are written as the x value first and then the y value. So if that's the case, this is going to be our x1, and this is going to be our y1. Now, why am I writing x1 and y1? To let you know that this is our first x and our first y. Well, then what do you think is going to happen here? Exactly. This is going to be x2, y2, to let me know that this is my second set of points. So here's my first set of points, 2, 5. My second set of points, 3, negative 1. Remember what we talked about when we said evaluating expressions means that I'm going to take the number that is assigned to the variable and replace it in the formula and then solve it from there mathematically. So if my formula says I start with y2, I'm going to look for y2, and y2 was negative 1. So m equals negative 1. Minus is a part of the formula, so I got to make sure I say minus. Next one is y1, and again, y1 is 5 over x2, and my x2 was 3. Again, minus is a part of the formula, so I have to say minus. And then x1, and x1 was 2. From there, I got to do the math, and I'm assuming again, you guys remember how to do it. Now, y'all know how I feel about looking at negatives. I like to think about it like money. So if I'm in the hole by $1, and then I get in the hole again by $5, I'm going to end up owing somebody $6. And then over here, I start off having $3 in my pocket. Then I owe you $2. Well, guess what? I still have $1 in my pocket. And of course, you know that if I'm simplifying a fraction, -6 divided by 1 is going to give me a -6. So my slope in this would be -6. Let's try another one. What if I were to have the values 2, 1, and -4, 5. So those are my values, right? 2, 1, and -4, 5. Now, labeling to me is so important because it keeps everything straight for you. So I'm going to go ahead and label my items before I start doing any math. So this is x1, this is y1. This would be x2, y2. Because again, first set of points, second set of points. So now I can do the math based on the formula. So my formula said y2. So when I look here, my y2 was 5. So 5. And again, minus is a part of the formula. So minus y1 in this case, which would be 1, over x2, and x2 was -4, minus, because it is a part of the formula, x1, and x1 in this case was 2. So now, of course, I do just the math. $5 in my pocket, giving away $1. Hey, I got $4 still left. Over, owe somebody $4. Then I owe you another $2. Well, I'm owing somebody $6. Well, of course, this can be reduced, so I can reduce it by 2. And again, I'm assuming we all remember about reducing fractions, etc. So this reduces into 2 over -3. So my slope is 2 over -3. That's if I want to find the slope using the formula. And this is the formula. You don't have to memorize it because it'll be there for you when you take a test, but you have to know how to use it. Last but not least, we want to deal with finding the slope when you have a graph. Now, when you have a graph, we're going to find slope based on what's known as the rise over the run. So I took a couple of graphs, and hopefully you guys can see these pretty good. Here's my graph. And remember what we said. We're going to use what's known as the rise over the run. And I'm hoping that you guys all remember when I talk about rising, I'm talking about moving up. So whenever I talk about rise, I think about going up. When I think about a run, I'm thinking about going either to the left, and I would go left only if something is negative, or I'm going to move to the right, and I move right when something is positive. Okay, so that's how I'm thinking about rise over run. I rise up and I run to the left if it's negative. I run to the right when I have positive. And we're going to talk about how all that looks. So let's look at this graph, right? In order to do slope, you have to find two distinctive points. Lines are based on a connection of points that fall along the line. So we're only going to use two of these. So we're going to use this point here and this point here. So these are going to be our two distinctive points that we're going to use. Always start at the lowest point. So this is my lowest point of the 2 points I'm using, okay? So I'm going to start here, and I want to know how far I rise. So from this point, I did a rise of 1. Rise meaning I'm getting to the line that my point is on. So my rise in this was 1 over my run. Again, I'm right here and I'm trying to get to that point. So I'm going to run over 1 space and I hit that point. So my run is 1. And because I went to the right, that makes it positive. So if I simplify 1 over 1, well, my slope is 1. Let's look at another one. Okay, look at this point, this graph. Again, these are linear because they make straight lines, and that's why we call them linear equations. Throwing some stuff in there, you guys. I'm again assuming you know. We only need 2 points. Doesn't matter how many points we see, we only need 2 of them. So I want to use this point here, and I want to use this point here. So again, I'm starting at the lower of the 2 points that I chose. So this is my lowest point. So how far do I have to go up? 1, 2. So I did a rise of 2. Because again, still using rise over run. And then from here, how far did I go over? I went over 1 to get to that dot. So my run is 1. And again, because I went to the right, that makes it positive. So 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2. So that's my slope. My slope happens to be 2. Last one. So in this one, again, doesn't matter how many dots I have on this line. I'm only going to choose 2 distinctive dots. So I want to choose this one right here and this one here. And what we mean by distinctive dots, so notice how these hit right on the connection of these two, of the X and the Y axis. They hit right at the connection. This wouldn't be a distinctive dot because it doesn't hit right on that line. So that's what we mean by distinctive dots. They have to fall right at the point where X and Y's intersect. So from the lowest point, I go up 1, 2, 3 spaces to be on the line of my next point. So my rise would be 3 over. How far do I go over for my run? I went 1, 2 spaces over for my run. And if you notice, this time we went to the left. So what does left mean? That makes this negative. Can I reduce this? No. We don't turn slope into mixed numbers. So then this is my final answer, 3 over negative 2. So that's all of the things that we would have with being able to identify slope. Remember, 3 ways. 1, slope from a graph using rise over run. Rise meaning going up. Run left is negative, right being positive. Finding the slope using a formula, and the formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And you have to identify your points and then plug them into the formula. Last but not least, being able to find the slope from an equation. And again, the equation for a linear equation is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, and that is found in front of the x. B is the y-intercept. We'll talk about that concept later. So anytime I have an equation, that number that is in front of x is going to be my slope. All right, hope it helps.